It darted away from the light with startling speed, disappearing deeper into the attic before I could make out what it might be. I was 23 when I learned that some noises should never be investigated. It started at exactly 5:17 a.m. A deafening bang jolted me awake so violently I nearly fell out of bed. It sounded like someone had dropped a refrigerator directly above my bedroom. My heart pounded as I stared at the ceiling, waiting for another sound. Silence. I lived alone in my grandmother's old farmhouse. The attic had been sealed for years because the floorboards were supposedly too weak. I'd never even been up there. Then came another noise. It sounded like something heavy was being dragged across the attic floor. I grabbed my phone and switched on the flashlight. My first thought was an animal. The scraping stopped as soon as I reached the hallway. Then I heard footsteps, directly over my head. There was only one access to the attic, a pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling. I stood beneath it, frozen, listening as the footsteps circled above me. Then they stopped directly over the ladder. I noticed something that hadn't been there before. Dust. A steady stream of dust drifted through the edges of the attic door. Outside, thunder exploded so violently the entire house shook. Rain hammered the roof in an instant, as if someone had emptied the sky all at once. The windows rattled under the force of the storm. The hallway light flickered once. Then, the entire house went black. The only light left was the trembling beam from my phone. A loud crack echoed above me. The attic door suddenly dropped open with a violent boom, the folding ladder beginning to unfold before stopping halfway, hanging crooked in the darkness. I instinctively pointed my flashlight into the opening. For the briefest second, I saw something, a silhouette. It darted away from the light with startling speed, disappearing deeper into the attic before I could make out what it might be. My pulse raced. The house fell deathly silent except for the pounding rain. Then, a drip. Something warm landed on my arm. Another drop splashed against my hand. I slowly lifted the flashlight toward the ceiling. A dark stain was spreading across the plaster, directly beneath the attic opening. It crept outward like spilled ink, growing larger by the second. Another drop struck the floor. I rubbed the liquid between my fingers. When I held my hand in the flashlight beam, my stomach twisted. Blood. My hands shook as I tried calling the police. No service. The router downstairs had died with the electricity. I was completely alone. A slow wooden creak pulled my attention back to the ladder. Something was climbing down. One foot emerged from the darkness. Its gray skin clung tightly to the bones, every toe unnaturally long with cracked yellow nails curling over the edge of the first ladder step. It remained perfectly still, as though it knew I was watching. Then, whispering drifted from the attic. Not one voice, dozens, soft, overlapping, none of them loud enough to understand. Another foot lowered onto the second step. I ran, slamming the bathroom door shut. I shoved the heavy vanity against it and collapsed onto the floor, trying to keep myself from screaming. The whispers followed. They circled the bathroom. Sometimes they sounded like children, sometimes like old women. Sometimes they sounded exactly like my own voice. The floor outside creaked. Slow footsteps stopped directly outside the door. A fingernail scratched across the wood. Then came 3 gentle knocks. For nearly an hour, I sat there in the darkness, crying silently while the whispers continued just outside. Then, nothing. The storm faded. Morning sunlight filtered through the tiny bathroom window. Every sound had stopped. After another 20 minutes, I finally pushed the vanity away and opened the door. The house was empty. The lights had returned. The attic ladder was folded neatly back into the ceiling. There wasn't a single drop of blood anywhere. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined everything. My phone went off. A voicemail had arrived. There was no phone number, no timestamp, just unknown caller. My hands trembled as I pressed play. At first, there was only static. Then I heard my own terrified voice. I made it into the bathroom. I don't think it saw me. There was a long pause. Then another voice whispered, "It sees you now."